Hello, and a very warm welcome to another episode of Building Back Better for Carers. My name's James Townsend. I'm CEO of Mobilise, and we are a tech startup by carers and for carers, helping to work with local authorities and carer supporting organisations around the country to provide extra capacity for support for unpaid carers. And there's a lot of unpaid carers at the moment who are having a really tough time. So we're having these conversations every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. We're back after a quick hiatus over the Easter break, and I'm really pleased to be welcoming this evening Nikki Pattinson from Leeds. Hello, Nikki.
Hi, James. Hi, everyone.
Great to have you with us, Nikki, and thanks to everybody who's joining with questions, comments. Please do bring them in as we go. If you've got any thoughts that you want us to be covering in the next few minutes. We're going to be running till about 6:30. Nikki, we're really pleased to have you with us, so thanks for coming along. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing with Carers Leeds?
Yes, I certainly can, James. So I am the Carers Engagement Leader at Carers Leeds. We're a carers centre based in Leeds, covering all of Leeds. You know, it kind of says it on the title there.
Brilliant.
I've been supporting carers for about 13 years, I think. The time's just flown, and caring myself for all of that time and more with Carers Leeds is to make sure that carers are involved in everything that we do, so that we have carers involved in staff recruitment, in how we do the website, and just, I guess, how we build that better for those carers. So it's in its infancy. People have maybe struggled to engage a little bit over lockdown, but we're getting there. It's very exciting to be able to listen to those voices and then put them in practice.
Well, and it's so important, isn't it? I know it's something that we all try to do, which is to make sure that carers are engaged in shaping the services that we're able to provide. And it sounds like you guys are really focusing on that and making it a big part of what you do. So I wonder, Nikki, I mean, first up, can you tell us a little bit about your personal experience of COVID over the last year? You mentioned that you've got some caring experience yourself. How have you been coping?
It's been, I guess it's a term quite often used at the moment, but it's been a roller coaster. I care for sort of two different people, different ages. One with teenage mental health concerns, and the other who's got physical and mental health and a bit of everything else thrown in. We've been through care being withdrawn right at the start, to shielding from being clinically extremely vulnerable, to not leaving the house, to having panic attacks when leaving the house. So we've kind of been through a whole host of things, but feeling very fortunate that care did return and been able to take a little bit more of a back seat as time's gone on. But it's been exhausting. I think definitely exhausting. And
you've been juggling that with a working role as well, yes, which must have given you a lot to deal with, I bet.
It has been a challenge at times, definitely. So the day job and the caring role blur into one at points. But in saying that, I wouldn't do the job I do if I hadn't experienced being a carer myself. And understand sort of firsthand some of those challenges. And that's not to say mine are the same as everybody's, because I know that they're not. We're all individual and we all deal with similar situations in different ways. But it's certainly given me a real understanding of just how difficult this past year's been. It's flown in some ways, and then it seems like forever ago in others.
And that leads me on to the next question, Nikki. So can you tell us a bit about the challenges that you've seen coming up for carers over the past year? I mean, we're just coming up towards, this week we've seen some of the lockdown restrictions starting to be lifted. For some people, that means a massive change to how they're living. For others, still quite limited. So what have you seen in terms of the carers that you're supporting at the moment?
Yeah, so it's been a fairly fairly complex picture in Leeds. We've had a lot of people who the person they care for was notified to shield, so the carer shielded alongside them, having no health conditions themselves, but having that being so terrified of bringing COVID into the home, so effectively cut themselves off from loved ones, from the outside world, to protect the person that they care for, which has been a huge undertaking and has had a huge impact on mental well-being. Generally, is the feedback that we get. We've also found that the lockdowns sort of easing hasn't had an impact on those people because they're not ready to get back out there. They've kind of been within the same four walls for so long that they're telling us that they're quite anxious about going out, anxious about meeting people, meeting in groups, meeting support workers. So I think there's a lot of work to be done around raising confidence and just helping to decrease that anxiety before people do start feeling able to engage again.
Yeah, I'm sure that is an experience reflected across the country, that there have been some real challenges to this point, and we now face some very different challenges as we relax things. And so over the course of the past year, Nikki, what have you and your team been doing that maybe is different, and how have you responded to the challenges?
Quickly, I would say we've responded very quickly to everything that's been thrown at us. A lot of what we're doing might be replicated in other organisations. We've been fortunate that we've been able to, I guess, move funds around quite quickly. So, for example, an activity budget that would usually pay for, I don't know, a trip to the coast or a meal out at Christmas, we were able to turn that and send sort of wellbeing treats to carers at the start of the very first lockdown. So we sent care packages of jigsaws, baking kits to do with the grandkids, and pot plants and all sorts of weird and wonderful things, just to give people a bit of a pick me up right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
When we thought it'd only be a couple of months, 2-3 months, things would be back to normal. So there was sort of some of the nice things that we've been able to do. Alternatively, we've been able to help people with digital, which has been a huge undertaking. I mean, Leeds as a city is quite far ahead with digital anyway, and with rollouts and with the research they're doing into who can and can't access devices and broadband. And we're fortunate that before lockdown, we were working with a couple of other organisations such as Leeds Libraries and 100% Digital to get tablets out to carers who didn't have their own device and didn't have broadband. So we were able to grow that really, get some funding and provide tablets or devices that people can keep, and looking at providing data with those as well, which has enabled people to access our services digitally who were excluded beforehand. So we've done a lot around wellbeing. We've increased wellbeing sessions that we run, yoga, looking after yourself, how to sleep well, healthy eating, sort of things that we'd maybe touched on before lockdown but hadn't focused on. So we kind of switched into a real carer wellbeing focus to complement the digital offer that we sort of brought in.
And you mentioned something really important there, Nikki, which is that there was a group of people who were excluded previously.
Yes.
Because there's one challenge around digital exclusion, which you mentioned, which is, I don't have the device and so on. But can you say a little bit more about the other form of exclusion? Because that's almost the opposite version, isn't it?
Sorry, I'm not with you, James.
Sorry. So you said people who had previously been excluded. So this is a group of people who, before lockdown, weren't able to access services because there wasn't a digital provision in quite the same way.
Yeah. I think for a lot of those people, they may not have felt the impact because they were accessing services face to face and things were just starting to move online. We're quite an old school service, if you like, or we were, where everything was face to face based, and digital. We were just dipping our toes in the water. We'd just started doing some digital training and digital drop-in cafes, so we're slightly ahead of the game when lockdown came. Slightly, but we just found it wasn't only accessing the devices and internet. A lot of people didn't know how to use the devices when we did lend them out. So we've had to put a package of holistic support in as well, looking at, does a carer have maybe dexterity issues, visual impairment, need things sort of explaining in a step-by-step way? Have they only ever used Apple in the past, maybe through employment, and we're having to relearn how to use an Android? We've had quite a bit of that where things just don't look the same on the two different devices. So we're fortunate that we'd started the work, but we do find, we can't just post a device out to somebody and that's fixed the problem. There's a whole package of support that has to be put in order for that device to be useful. So it's not just the how to get on, it's how to download apps. And we look at things like mindfulness apps, we look at wellbeing apps with people, and then we try and engage them in our digital services as well. So it's never just, here's your tablet, thank you, goodbye. It's here's your tablet, how can we help you engage with services to access support? So it's a huge piece of work.
It is, yeah. And there's so many questions I want to ask you about this. One of them is, how has your team responded to that? Because was your team all set up and ready to go with those skills, or did you have to learn all of that on the fly?
Yes, definitely learning it on the fly, especially myself. I'm a self-confessed technophobe. My technology is years behind everyone else's, and so it's kind of dragged me kicking and screaming into.
And here you are live streaming to the world on a Thursday evening, casually from home.
No one believes it. No one, like my family, will not believe that this is happening. It's like you don't even know how to use all the apps on your phone, and here you are doing this. So it's very much, we've had to learn on the go. Luckily, we did manage to recruit a digital inclusion coordinator who had a lot of those skills already, but that was kind of last autumn, winter. So we had to learn really quickly. And it's very different when you're putting something on your own device in front of you to when you're trying to explain over the phone to somebody who's maybe never had a tablet before what an app is, what the icon looks like. And we have spent sort of 2-3 hours on the phone with somebody trying to install Zoom, for example, so they could take part in staff recruitment. And it's exhausting for all involved. The carer becomes exhausted and frustrated. And the key for us as staff is not to let it get to that point, to, I guess, know when to stop for the day and try again, but not being able to sit side by side with somebody and just say, oh, yeah, it's that button there, has made a huge difference.
There's so many skills in there, aren't there? Because there's understanding how Zoom works and how Zoom works on an Android tablet as opposed to the phone that you're, appreciating that the person you're talking to is talking about something else, is seeing something different.
Yes.
But also knowing how to keep that conversation light and putting some jokes in and making sure that you're encouraging people rather than just making them feel like they don't know what they're doing.
Very much so, and I think that's a skill in itself, because it's, you feel frustrated on their behalf, and in the real world, in the old world, we could just sit there and like I said, just help them and show them and help them learn. It's been really difficult helping people learn remotely, because we've tried to help somebody install Zoom so we could share screens and show them, or we could see what they can see. But when we can't get to that first step, it becomes incredibly, I guess, disappointing, because we're here to help that carer enhance their life and to try and make things a little bit better. And when we don't achieve that, it's actually quite disheartening.
Hey, you guys are in this outfit because you care about the outcome. You care about the people you're supporting. So when we can't do that, it's frustrating. And Nikki, you also mentioned that you'd adjusted and adapted some of the program of support that you had delivered. Can you say a little bit more about what that looked like?
Yeah, so we were able to really quickly mobilise a lot of the support we were offering online. I think within a couple of months, which we were really proud of, given where we all were with technology beforehand. Like I said, it was a steep learning curve for staff, definitely. So we looked at increasing our carer wellbeing support. So one of my colleagues started a weekly sort of wellbeing mindfulness session. So every week, carers would come along on Zoom and just have some quiet time, listen to some sort of guided meditation, and just have time to relax. The same colleague ran sessions on sort of sleep, looking after yourself, and building self-esteem. We've done similar courses with our young adult carers as well. Received some funding to add, just resilience and staff have done compassion fatigue training, because we're all just trying to help other people, but that does leave you drained yourselves at some points.
And I mean, all of that sounds really engaging. And I wonder, have you started talking to any new people as a result of this who previously weren't on your radar?
Yes, lots. So we found we've done some light touch research, as it were, into what's brought new people to us at this time. And for those that have joined us online, it has been the convenience. So we've had carers who've never come to a support group or an activity that we've run, and the feedback's been, when they have it online, there's no travel time. I'm not having to find respite because I can do it with my son or whoever in the other room. I'm not leaving 3 hours because I've got to get the bus and wait for public transport. We've had couples who've come to things together, whereas normally one of them would be looking after the person they care for and the other one comes and they take it in turns. So we've definitely had an increase in people attending. We have lost people who haven't been able to, but we are still in touch with those people. So it definitely has its pros and its cons.
Yeah. And of course that leads us on now. The headline of this conversation is how we can build back better for carers. And Nikki, I wonder, given all that you've learned, all the new skills that you've developed and where you've reshaped the services, as you think to the future, what does a brilliant future look like for carers from your perspective?
I think it's not going back to the way things were. We've found different ways of working that do work for some people, so we need to keep that included. We can't return to everything being face to face and exclude all those people who've joined us because we're online. So it's looking at everybody's needs really, but we don't want to exclude those who haven't been able to join us online either. Some of whom aren't keen to return to face-to-face groups because of the anxiety and the confidence I mentioned earlier. So it's just, for me as engagement lead, it's talking to those carers about what they want from us, which is really important. We don't want to just assume and run off and set up loads of face-to-face groups that people don't actually want or don't feel comfortable attending. So we're taking everything a day at a time. One of the teams I work with, did an outdoors walk and talk, and we're talking about looking at restarting their services outdoors, which is not something we'd have really considered for, but looking at, if carers are saying to us, we'd meet you but only at the park, then that's what we'll do. We're not going to be saying, no, you can meet us in a building, we'll go meet them at the park. And that's the great thing about sort of carers organisations. We'll bend to meet the needs of the people who use the service.
It's so important, isn't it? And a lot of the carer supporting organisations we're talking to have found that the original specification that they're working to from the local authority is actually now a million miles from what they're delivering and actually what carers need. And it's been really exciting to see how flexing and responding to the directly expressed need is there. And Nikki, can I put a question to you? Because you mentioned talking to carers every day about what they need, taking it a day at a time. That is not something that is easy, right? So what are the key approaches that you're using to make sure that you can capture that kind of really responsive feedback on what carers need?
It's a tricky one. I think people are struggling to engage with us at the moment, so those opinions are difficult to hear. Zoom fatigue's mentioned a few times. People are a bit fed up of online, so you can't really set up an online focus group because it's not what people want to do to give their opinion. So we've done things like surveys through our e-bulletin. The staff who are working with carers, so the carer support workers, are asking those questions when they're having sessions with people. We're asking them at the virtual groups, what is it that you want? Do you want the group to stay online? Do you want to go back to face? And for some of those people, it's no, we don't. This is actually more convenient. So I don't know if I've answered your question there, or just sort of randomly waffled something different, but it's tough.
I think what you've described, Nikki, is really helpful, which is that there's a range of different things we've got to do, and it's not going to be one slam dunk to get the answer. No. And actually, I mean, I wonder, as I always do, at around 20 minutes into these conversations, I stray out of the interviewing role, and I think there's a piece about culture, isn't there? So we can do as many surveys as we like, but embedding the culture of every interaction we have with a carer, as you're describing, just asking those questions, making sure we're proactively listening for some of those answers. I think that's really key.
Definitely.
So, and Nikki, thinking ahead, trying to make our services more and more responsive, what are the things that you would like to see coming, from the whole sector, not necessarily in your organisation, but from others around the place?
I think that's a difficult one. Because Leeds, we're lucky, we are a really responsive city, and sort of third sector partners and other agencies have been as well. For example, we've been sort of really a huge part of the vaccine rollout for carers, which, if we didn't have such close relationships with both the NHS and the council, wouldn't have happened. So we're very lucky in Leeds. That's not to say it's perfect. Things can always improve. For me, I guess it's everyone recognising that carers exist, that we look like normal people for the most part, and that we save systems and things so much money, and I know it's been spoken about so many times, but just to be seen as a real partner in the care for that person, to be listened to. I think there's still a lot of work to be done there nationally. Again, I know I've gone off topic.
No, I think that's a really important message, and one that we can only crack together, right? I don't think each one of our different organisations looking to support carers can be doing the best in the world, but if we're not able together to shift the understanding of what it is that we're doing, to make those links with different organisations, then we won't be able to change that perception.
And it's working together instead of in competition. If budgets are tight and things are difficult, it's about pulling together, not sort of competing with each other.
Absolutely, and sharing our experiences and our learning.
And, you bet me to it. You bet me to it.
Well, that's what you've been doing this evening. So thank you very much for doing that, Nikki. Really appreciate your time, and thanks to everybody who's been with us both this evening and who's catching us online on YouTube as well. We're here every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. You can now enjoy us with the sun coming through the window and looking out at what's outside, because it's finally getting sunny again in the evenings. Nikki, thanks again. Great to see you, and all the best with your fantastic work.